How do I stop when I read the first ayah in Surah Al-Fatiha? Do I say Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen or Al-Alameen or Al-Alameen? Is it 2 or 4 or 6 harakat? That's the topic of today's video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And today we're talking about Mad Aarid lissukoon. So bismillah, let's get into the details. In terms of learning outcomes and what you should be able to get out from this video, number 1 is you should be able to identify what Mad Aarid lissukoon is. Where is it? Where does it come? Number 2, you should be able to apply the correct length to this mad. And number 3, you should be able to analyze how to read it when stopping and what to do if you're continuing. So the word al-alameen, when we stop, that ya at the end before the noon, that's a mad aarid lissukoon. Now what does that actually mean? So here there was a harf mad followed by a letter, and if you look at that letter normally has a fatha, but when we stopped on it, we temporarily changed that fatha to a sukoon. So we stopped on a noon with a sukoon. That sukoon is called a temporary or conditional sukoon, and therefore the ya or the mad before it is now called mad aarid lissukoon. So a mad before a letter which has a temporary sukoon. Now that's a mouthful, but in practice it's easy. Anytime there's a harf mad followed by a letter which you make sakin because you're stopping, that's a mad aarid lissukoon. So the technical definition is it's when a harf mad is followed by a letter which has a conditional or temporary sukoon. That is mad aarid lissukoon. Now the next question is, how long should we read it? So in the word al-alameen, I can read it with 2 harakat or 4 harakat or 6 harakat. So I can say al-alameen, or with 4 I can say al-alameen, or with 6 I can say al-alameen. Now how am I gauging this 2 or 4 or 6? Now in this one there is a measuring stick, there is a gauge. You can see we're saying al-a, that mad tabi'i, that's 2 harakas. So from that I can extract from the speed of my recitation, I can extract that 2 harakat, and then I can know, okay, therefore that's how long 2 should be, and now I know how long 4 should be and how long 6 should be. Now what happens if I continue the reading, if I don't actually stop? So if I am reading the first ayah and continue the second ayah and say Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Now what's happened here? Al-Alameen. When I'm continuing, there is no sukoon anymore. There's no conditional sukoon. It becomes a fatha. So there is no mad aarid lissukoon if you continue. And now it's back to being a mad tabi'i only, and it's only read with 2 harakat. So when you're continuing, you can't extend it more than 2 harakat because it is a mad tabi'i. And you notice when I stopped on Ar-Rahim, I made that 4 because there is a mad aarid lissukoon. Same thing, a ya maddiyah followed by a letter which has a temporary or conditional sukoon. That meme, normally it has a kasra, Ar-Rahimi Maliki Yawmiddin. But when I stopped, it became a temporary sukoon, and the mad before it became a mad aarid lissukoon. So mad aarid lissukoon can be read as 2 or 4 or 6. And now depends on the speed of recitation. If I'm reading quickly, as a matter of preference, it's suitable to read with 2. So if I'm reading hadr, I read with 2. And if I'm reading at a moderate pace with tadweer, I would read with 4. And if I'm reading with tahqiq, so with a slower pace, I would read mad aarid lissukoon with 6. That's just a matter of preference. Now here's a little bit of a detailed point. We say 2 or 4 or 6. So we're not saying 2.5 or 4 5/8 or 6 and a little bit. It's either 2 or 4 or 6. So it doesn't mean I'm just going to extend it and it will fall on one of them. Wherever it falls, it's fine. No, it has to be gauged. Just like we said, you extract the gauge from the speed of your recitation. That's 2 harakat. And now it's either that length or double it to become 4 or triple that to become 6. But it's not wherever it falls, it should be fine. So it's not open-ended. It's a gauged med, and that comes with practice. So let's take another couple of examples. In Surah An-Nas, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. So that alif there before the sin, that's a mad عارض للسكون. Why? Because the sin now has a conditional sukun, and I just read that with 4 harakat. And in Surah Al-Kafirun, لا أعبد ما تعبدون. Where's the mad عارض للسكون there? That waw before the noon, which has a temporary or conditional sukun. And now I read it there again with 4 harakat. So let's summarize and revisit those learning objectives and tick them off. Number 1, we wanted to identify what mad عارض للسكون is. And to simplify it, we say when you stop on a letter and you force that letter to have a sukun conditionally or temporarily just because you're stopping, and if the letter before it is a harf of mad, then that mad is mad عارض للسكون, and you extend it to 2 or 4 or 6 harakat. And the second point is to identify what to do when you stop there or if you continue. And we said that if you stop, that's now the definition of mad عارض للسكون, and you can do it 2 4 6. However, if you continued, that's no longer a mad عارض للسكون because there's no sukun anymore, and now it's back to being a mad طبيعي of 2 harakat. We'll see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.